Wonderful to see you all out there in Zoom land as well. We have people both here in person and out in the world. So my name is Ryoshin. Early this week, when I was thinking about what to talk about today, I opened a tab on my phone, and the words I saw were, "What about right now?" Now, the web page that I was looking at had nothing to do with Zen. It was actually a page about the latest COVID vaccines. I was interested when the next vaccine is coming out. But it struck me that it was a very good topic for a Dharma talk. So how is it with you right now? How are you feeling? Maybe you've had a lot on your mind, or there's a lot going on in your life. Maybe there's not a lot going on in your life. But we just sat 2 periods of zazen, either here in the Zendo or perhaps in your home. How are you right now? I think this is an important question because most of us live a lot of our lives avoiding right now. We have a tremendous capacity for avoidance. Speaking for myself, I'm almost always busy. There's so much to do. And yes, there's a lot to do, but part of my activity is just filling my time with pleasant distractions or avoiding unpleasant distractions. We construct entire systems of thought as protective mechanisms that prevent us from being present. And so we see a distorted version of the world because our eyes are filled with our own ideas about ourselves and the world. So how are you right now? This is really why we sit. When we sit on the cushion, when we sit zazen, we express the intention to just sit, to be present with whatever arises right now. And whatever arises, we let it go. If delusion arises, we let it go. If realization arises, we let it go. Master Dogen said, practice and enlightenment are one. Practice and enlightenment are one. And our conventional way of thinking is that we practice to become enlightened. But the teachings tell us that our practice itself is the expression of enlightenment, the enlightenment that we already have. I've been rereading a book by Kosho Uchiyama Roshi called Opening the Hand of Thought. And he brings up the statement, 1 inch sitting, 1 inch Buddha. And Uchiyama Roshi says that this doesn't mean that if you sit for a little bit, you're only a little bit of a Buddha. You're only partway there. It means that if you sit for a little bit, you're fully Buddha. And you should sit more. So this is what zazen teaches us. We learn to calm our mind. We assume the posture. We start following our breath and counting our breath. We adjust our posture. We relax our shoulders. We breathe in and we breathe out. It's really very, very simple. Now, as Westerners, of course, we want to make it really complicated, but it's actually a very simple practice. Doesn't mean it's easy. It takes patience. It takes effort. But if we give it time, our mind calms down. And once our minds are calm, it's easier to be present. It's easier to develop a little bit of insight into what's really going on. Uchiyama Roshi also says that zazen is our truest and most venerable teacher. So I made the decision this year to attend the first week of sesshin. There were 2 weeks of sesshin. And the first week is Jukai week. And I don't think I had ever done this actually since I myself took Jukai a long, long time ago. It's a very different schedule from the Dai sesshin. There are no Dharma talks. There's more sitting. It's called Return to Silence. The Jukai class left the Zendo each day for instruction, and a small core of people that were there for this session that weren't taking Jukai were in the Zendo, just sitting for a couple of extra periods. And sesshin is really such a wonderful opportunity to settle into our minds. Just follow the schedule. Do your service position wholeheartedly. And you may notice, maybe a day or two in, that you've dropped body and mind. You're just there, just chanting when you're in a service. And as I said earlier, as soon as we notice something, we let it go, we drop it. We notice a thought, we drop it. We notice another thought, we drop it. The very structure of sesshin actually is conducive to this practice. I was thinking earlier this week about how there are 3 periods of sitting in the morning. At 5:25 a.m., Shuso and Roshi offer incense at the altar, chant silently, and then walk the Jundo line, greeting each of us in the morning in Gasho. At 5:30 a.m., we sit the first period. And after a few moments of silence at the beginning of that period, the Ino leads us in chanting the Gatha of Atonement. Then there's a period of kinhin. Then we sit for the second period. There's another period of kinhin, and we sit for the third period. And at the end of the third period, the Ino leads us in chanting the verse of the Kesa. What a wonderful way to start a day of practice. First, we atone for all of the evil karma we've created in our lives. And then we renew our vows. Remember why we wear the Buddha's robe. At the very end of the week, we had the Fusatsu ceremony and the Jukai ceremony, both of which Shinryu Roshi officiated at. And being one with the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, we again atone and we again renew our vows. And at Jukai, we've renewed our vows with 6 new baby Buddhas. Our vows are really about how our practice manifests in our life. We sit on the cushion for 1 or 2 or 11 periods, and then we go back out into the world. And it doesn't work to sit for 11 periods and then go out and lead a self-centered life. It's not how this works. It's not why we're here. We are vowing to go out into the world not to try to satisfy our desires, but to serve. Gaining is delusion. Losing is enlightenment. We vow to let go of grasping, and we vow to lose ourselves in a life of service. I mentioned the services earlier, and some of you may like or love our chanting services. Some of you may find that they're an acquired taste, whatever they are for you. The way that we practice has been around for hundreds of years. We follow an adaptation of Japanese forms. And our chanting service also brings us back to every moment, brings us back to right now. And if you don't believe me, try chanting in Japanese if you're thinking about something else. It's very, very easy to make a mistake on one syllable just because your mind goes off to one little thing for just a moment. And you find that it takes you a whole line to catch up again. Namu karatan no toraya ya namu uriya boryoki chi shiura fujisato. It just goes on and on with this rapid, vigorous pace that brings us back to the moment over and over again, whether we understand what we're chanting or not. And that is the point. We don't really need to understand it to be in the moment, just chanting. No other ideas in our head. And I feel this whole experience is beautifully captured in a koan, of course. And the koan is Yunmen's Within There Is a Jewel. It's case 62 in the Blue Cliff Record, and I think it's also in the Book of Serenity. And so the case is, Yunmen said to the community, within heaven and earth, through space and time, there is a jewel hidden in the mountain of form. Pick up a lamp and go into the Buddha hall. Take the triple gate and bring it back on the lamp. Now, the first line of this koan, within heaven and earth, through space and time, there is a jewel hidden in the mountain of form, is a quote from Master Seng Chao's Jewel Treasury. And it's actually a complete coincidence, but as I was working on this talk, I realized that in the last talk that I gave, the monk who was the subject of the koan also read a quote from Sheng Zhao. And that was Nanchuan's It's Like a Dream. So Seng Chao or Sheng Zhao was a very influential teacher. He actually predates Bodhidharma in China by more than 50 years. He died more than 50 years before Bodhidharma was born. And as the story goes, for some reason, he got in trouble with the authorities. This was a very chaotic period in China, and he was due to be executed. But he asked for a 7-day reprieve, during which he compiled the Jewel Treasury that these masters are citing. So within heaven and earth, through space and time, there is a jewel hidden in the mountain of form. So if you read the commentary, it says that the mountain of form is the 4 gross elements, earth, fire, water, and wind, and the 5 aggregates, or the 5 heaps that we chant in the Heart Sutra: form, sensation, conception, discrimination, awareness. And Gesho actually, during the Dai session, gave a lovely talk on form and emptiness that I listened to this week. She gave it during the second week of session, and she talked about the journey of the industrial grade carpet that was on the floor of the Zendo up in Wisdom House, and the journey of that plastic from millions of years ago when it was being formed in some swamp somewhere, and then milled into a carpet that will someday be removed and find its way into landfill. So it's a lovely talk about form and emptiness. So this jewel is hidden in the mountain of form. And the mountain of form is completely empty. It's It's around us all the time, and it's completely empty. In chapter 3 of the Vimalakirti Sutra, that was our study text, the Buddha asked Mahakasyapa to visit Vimalakirti. And the great Bodhisattva doesn't want to do it. And this is, of course, an amusing part of the rather long and sometimes confusing sutra, because Vimalakirti in the past has shown himself to be a much more advanced practitioner than this great Bodhisattva, and he feels ashamed. And at the time, Vimalakirti told him, Mahakasyapa, when you are begging for food, you should go about it in the appropriate spirit, because there is no such thing as eating, and when receiving food, because there is no such thing as receiving. It's all empty. And he was actually chastising him because Mahakasyapa did not demonstrate appropriate equanimity. He was only willing to beg from the poor. He was not willing to beg from wealthy people. And Vimalakirti had noticed this, that he discriminated against people who had accumulated some wealth, and this was not appropriate practice. And Mahakasyapa was ashamed. Vimalakirti also said, understand that all phenomena are no more than phantom forms. An echo of the Diamond Sutra. My talk last time was Life is but a dream. It's all transient, ephemeral, flowing. There's nothing fixed that can be pinned down about this life. So this jewel is hidden in the mountain of form. But what is the jewel that Yunmen is referring to? Well, if you've been sitting for a while, I think you know the answer to this question. Breathing in and breathing out, we feel ourselves settling into our bodies. Hidden in this mountain of form, hidden in our very bodies, is the Dharma treasure. Buddha is already here. We don't need to go seeking it, Buddha elsewhere. And this is completely in line with the teachings that have been handed down to us. We chanted just this morning, form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. During sesshin, we chanted the identity of relative and absolute. Ordinary life, your ordinary life and my ordinary life, fits the absolute like a box and its lid. The absolute works together with the relative like two arrows meeting in midair. Everyone is fully endowed with Buddha nature. Everyone is perfect and complete just as they are. Now, we may know this intellectually, but we don't always believe it. Or we may cling to an idea of emptiness. Whichever way, Yunmen adds another line to help us realize it. He says, pick up a lamp and go into the Buddha hall. Take the triple gate and bring it back on the lamp. So take a lamp and go into the Buddha hall. This part's understandable. Understandable enough. And then he says, take the triple gate and bring it on the lamp. So the triple gate refers to the three gates that are traditionally at the entrance to a Zen temple or a Zen monastery. So how do you bring the triple gate on the lamp? It's a non sequitur. You can't do it. But the triple gate's right here. And the lamp of our consciousness is right here. It's the lamp of our life. It's right here. Take the lamp of your life and go into the Buddha hall. Take the lamp of your life and go out into the world. The world is right here. It's not separate from any of us. I've been enjoying the cooler weather this week that we've had since sesshin. And actually, I moved a chaise lounge to a place in the backyard where no one can see me. And I bring the dogs out into the yard, and I just sit back and I look up at the trees and the sky. Maybe for 5 minutes, maybe for 10 minutes. I just watch the trees and the sky. And of course, there's also lots to do. Bills to pay, Dharma talks to write, friends and family to spend time with and to help out. And when I'm done looking at the sky, I get up and get back to work. What is the jewel? I think it's the gift of being awake to the present moment. And where do we take the lamp? Where do you take your lamp out into the world? The pointer to this koan is beautiful. The first line is, by means of the knowledge that has no teacher, he produces the marvelous function of non-doing. By means of the knowledge that has no teacher, he produces the marvelous function of non-doing. Another translation is, with untaught wisdom, he engages in the subtle action of inaction. Our wisdom is not taught. Wisdom cannot be taught. We uncover it in ourselves. And zazen teaches us the marvelous function of non-doing. By means of unconditional compassion, he acts unaided as an excellent friend. With unsolicited compassion, he becomes your true friend. Compassion is not conditional. It doesn't have to be solicited. You don't need to ask for it. Because of our connectedness with the world, compassion arises. The next two lines, in one phrase there is killing, there is giving life. In one act there is releasing, there is holding. These two lines illustrate killing the small self and giving life to the self that is one with everything. And the last line, tell me, who has ever been like this? Tell me, who is it that comes this way? Each of you, tell me.